Yes, that's better. The world can be loud, demanding, even a little too eager for your attention. But here, we go the other way. This is the drowsy tales, where history tucks you in and time itself forgets which way it was going. So find your favorite pillow, pull the blanket up just enough, and listen close, dear sleeper. Because tonight, we are visiting cities that do not belong, not in maps, not in textbooks, and, some might argue, not in reality at all. They are the strange, stubborn wrinkles in history, cities that shimmered for a moment then vanished, or rose where nothing should have survived, or curiously, seemed to have been entirely forgotten until someone remembered. You see, not all ruins are empty. Some are filled with questions, and tonight, we wander through them together. The city beneath the sand, Ubar, the Atlantis of the sands. Let us begin, as all good legends do, with a story that smells of incense, sand, and sweet exaggeration. They called it Ubar. Others named it Iram of the Pillars, a place so decadent, so drenched in perfume and arrogance, that it offended even the heavens. And according to the Quran, it was swallowed whole by the desert. Now, that's a bit dramatic, isn't it? But then again, deserts are known for their flair. Ubar was said to be a city of immense wealth and strange towers, a trading hub of frankincense and myrrh, back when aromatherapy meant something more like sacred diplomatic currency. Its people were proud, its walls unbreachable, and its sins, well, let's just say the historical record is a little hazy, but probably lavish. What we do know, or rather, what a few bold archaeologists believe, is that in the 1990s, satellite imaging showed something odd beneath the dunes of Oman. Old caravan routes, converging, like veins leading to a buried heart. And there, under the shifting sands, some say, was the city that shouldn't exist. A collapsed limestone cavern, maybe. A ghost market. Or just a coincidence. Because, my dear listener, the desert does not give up its secrets easily, and sometimes a mirage is more generous than a map. Paititi, the lost city of gold that refused to be found. There is something particularly dangerous about hope. It sparkles. It hums in the ears. It compels men to walk straight into jungles, barefoot and hallucinating, convinced that on the other side lies Paititi. Ah, Paititi, the fabled city of gold, or possibly silver, or, depending on the century, just a really good excuse to disappear forever into the Peruvian Amazon. Let's set the scene. It is the 16th century. The Spanish have arrived, and they are deeply offended by the lack of gold already pre-delivered to their ships. They hear whispers from the conquered Inca. Not here, they say. No, not here. The real treasure lies far to the east, beyond the mountains, in the rainforest past the clouds, a hidden city untouched by conquest, a sanctuary of kings, a place where the sun still smiles. It's exactly the kind of thing you tell someone when you want them to go away and get eaten by a jaguar. But the Spanish did not take the hint, and so expedition after expedition vanished. Priests, soldiers, treasure hunters. Some sent letters back claiming they'd seen temples in the mist. Others simply stopped sending anything at all. It became a sort of European rite of passage. Get a boat, hire some desperate men, and die gloriously in the jungle while chasing a myth. It's like the Renaissance version of going off-grid. Even in the 20th century, the fever never quite broke. Governments, explorers, even Indiana Jones enthusiasts, all returned to the green, buzzing wild to look for something they couldn't name. The irony? The Inca did have hidden mountain cities, like Vilcabamba, their last stronghold, and Machu Picchu, which no one outside Peru really remembered until 1911. So, maybe Paititi existed. Maybe it was never made of gold, just stone, moss, and the last stubborn gasp of a fallen empire. Or maybe it's still out there, drowsing in the jungle, overgrown and amused, watching us get lost. Either way, it's not the kind of place you find by accident. You go in circles, and it watches you from behind the leaves. And when you turn back, empty-handed, half mad, you realize you weren't looking for a city, you were chasing a feeling, a glint in the trees. Like all good dreams, Paititi disappears when you try to grab it. Derinkuyu, the city beneath your feet. Not all lost cities are lost to time. Some are lost to depth. Picture it, a quiet village in the region of Cappadocia, in central Turkey. A land of soft volcanic stone carved over centuries into churches, tombs, and homes. And then, one day in the 1960s, a man renovating his basement knocks through a wall and finds more basement, then more basement, and then a staircase that spirals downward like a secret and keeps going. This, dear dreamer, was the accidental rediscovery of Derinkuyu, an entire underground city built perhaps as early as the 8th century BCE and large enough to house 20,000 people. Yes, 20,000. Living not in tents, not in huts, but in a multi-story labyrinth beneath the earth, complete with wine cellars, ventilation shafts, schools, and what archaeologists quietly call a religious room, because mysterious cavern with symbols sounds a bit too ritual sacrificey on the paperwork. Now, why, you might ask, in your soft blanket cocoon, would anyone voluntarily live in the world's deepest apartment complex? Safety, mostly. Invasions were frequent. Armies swept across Anatolia like bad weather. And if your village happened to be in their path, you had two choices: be conquered or be clever. And so they carved and dug and built doors out of massive round stones that could only be rolled shut from the inside, like giant stone bottle caps for unwanted guests. It was dark, it was damp, it was utterly genius. They lived by candlelight and caution. Children played in tunnels. Goats were kept on designated underground floors. Yes, underground goats, which, if you're wondering, smell exactly as good as you'd imagine. And when the invaders were gone, the people emerged, blinking at the sun like cautious moles, and resumed their lives above ground until the next raid, the next war, the next reminder that the earth could be softer than a sword. Derinkuyu wasn't the only one. There are hundreds of underground dwellings in Cappadocia, but Derinkuyu was the largest, the deepest, the quietest scream in the stone. Secret's moment, and it lay hidden for centuries. Not lost to erosion, but simply forgotten beneath floorboards. Which raises the very comforting thought: if one man's basement could contain a city, what, pray tell, is under yours? Madol, Venice of the Pacific, built on coral. It begins, as these things often do, with ruins that no one can quite explain. Off the coast of the island of Pohnpei, in Micronesia, there lies a floating city, a fractured chessboard of stone and sea, 1,000 years old, and almost entirely forgotten. Its name is Madol. It means spaces between, which is fitting because that's where it sits. Between time, between land, between what we understand and what we very politely choose not to ask. Now, how do you build a city on top of a coral reef? You don't, unless, of course, you are a little unhinged and very, very determined. Madol was constructed using giant basalt columns, lava frozen into hexagonal tubes, which were somehow transported, stacked, and balanced across more than 90 tiny islets. Some of the stones weigh as much as 50 tons. 50, as in, wouldn't fit in your driveway. And no one knows how they moved them. There are no pulleys, no wheels, no beasts of burden. The local oral tradition offers a simpler explanation: magic. According to legend, the city was built by twin sorcerer brothers who flew the stones through the air using chants and spells. Honestly, after trying to figure out the logistics, you might believe them. Madol was once the seat of the Sodalur dynasty, a ruling class that governed by both sacred authority and an alarming love of isolation. Only nobles were allowed to live within the city's watery lanes. The common folk, sent home at sundown, like a very damp, very ancient, gated community. There were temples, there were tombs, there were sacrificial altars, which again, no one talks too much about because it's bedtime, and this is a relaxing show. But the dynasty eventually fell, as these things do, and Madol was abandoned, not destroyed by war or fire, but simply left to the moss and the tides. Now the jungle leans in, the sea reclaims what it can. Fish swim through ancient doorways, and herons perch where priests once stood. It is a ruin that feels more like a haunting, not malevolent, just watchful, patient. And to this day, no one has been able to explain how it was built, nor why no one remembers building anything else quite like it. Madol floats in the Pacific like a dream too strange to wake from. Heavy stones resting on fragile coral, a puzzle built backwards. Now let the waves carry you. Dwarka, Krishna's kingdom beneath the sea. There is something poetic, isn't there, about a city that both begins and ends with myth. Dwarka, they call it, the Golden City, the City of Gates, or more famously, the home of Lord Krishna, that charming, flute-playing, mischief-making god who spent equal time seducing milkmaids and dismantling evil dynasties. As one does. According to ancient Hindu texts, Krishna didn't just live in Dwarka, he built it, or rather, had it built for him, by celestial architects who apparently didn't charge by the hour. It was said to be made of crystal, silver, gold. A radiant metropolis with 900,000 palaces, countless gardens, and streets so clean you'd feel guilty walking on them. It was paradise. And also temporary, because after Krishna's death, the city, as foretold, was reclaimed by the sea, swallowed whole like a legend exhaled. Now for centuries, this story was treated as a myth, a glorious, sparkling bedtime story, until 2001, when archaeologists diving off the coast of Gujarat, near the modern town of Dwarka, found something curious. Stone structures, steps, walls, artifacts that didn't quite belong to any known civilization of that exact age or location. Sonar scans revealed symmetrical patterns, foundations of something. Maybe a temple, maybe a city, maybe just the sea playing tricks on human hope again. But some historians lean forward in their chairs. Because if what lay beneath the waves was really man-made, and really that old, then perhaps the Mahabharata wasn't just poetry. Perhaps it was memory pressed into verse. Of course, mainstream archaeologists are cautious, and rightly so. It's hard to date a city when it's been soaking in salt water for a few millennia. Still, what a thing to imagine. A city built for a god, lost to prophecy, rediscovered by satellite and scuba gear. And while no golden palaces have been found, the stones tell their own soft story, worn, submerged, still standing beneath currents that forget and remember in equal measure. Dwarka may be a myth, but it's a wet, complicated myth with just enough evidence to make you wonder what else the sea is hiding. So if you ever visit the coast of Gujarat, stand by the shore at twilight. Listen, and if you hear a flute, well, that's probably just the wind. Probably. Zerzura, the white city of the Sahara. There is a peculiar kind of silence in the desert, It doesn't press on the ears like night does. It floats, it sways, it waits for you to believe you're alone, and then it begins to whisper. That's how Zerzura enters the story, not with proof, but with whispers. The legend of Zerzura begins sometime in the 13th century. In Arabic texts, it is described as the oasis of little birds, a white city nestled in the far western Sahara, filled with date palms, running water, and architecture so gleaming it was said to blind the eye. And here's the catch. Zerzura was ruled by a sleeping king and queen, protected by black giants, guarded by ancient spells. Standard zoning laws for a desert paradise. Many dismissed it, of course. A mirage, a dream conjured by travelers who'd had a little too much sun and not nearly enough water. But others went looking. European explorers in the early 20th century became obsessed. A mix of adventurers, archaeologists, and, let's be honest, men with too much money and not enough sense. They packed jeeps and camels. They wandered through Libya, Egypt, Sudan, tracing old caravan routes, asking tribal elders, listening for that particular flicker in a story that means someone once saw something they weren't supposed to. In 1932, a Hungarian desert explorer named Laszlo Almásy, yes, the one later romanticized in The English Patient, claimed to have found a lost oasis. Not Zerzura exactly, but close enough that his eyebrows raised and his sponsors leaned in. He discovered a series of wadis, dried riverbeds, and rock paintings deep in the Gilf Kebir plateau that seemed, perhaps, a little too sophisticated for nomads. But he found no city, no sleeping royalty, no polished gates. Still, the legend lingered. The Tuareg nomads told tales of a white city hidden by the dunes, one you could only find if it wanted to be found, and only if you didn't ask too many questions. Which, when you think about it, is just the desert's way of saying, go home, hydrate, you're not built for this. And yet, somewhere in the dunes, where satellite maps blur and the sand reshapes itself every season, there may yet be bones of something. Walls, wells, the faint fossil of a city that was never meant to be remembered. Or perhaps Zerzura is just a mirage, a metaphor for the kind of peace you can only chase but never hold. A city that offers nothing but the hope of discovery, which, for some, is more than enough. When you dream tonight, let your mind wander through wind-worn pillars, where silence is a citizen and time is just sand in slow motion. We go next to the forests of Cambodia, to a city that once ruled an empire and then vanished beneath the vines. Then let us step softly, dear wanderer, out of the desert's golden mirage and into the emerald hush of a waiting fort. Mahendraparvata, the jungle's forgotten crown. They say the jungle forgets nothing. It wraps its roots around memory, swallows stone like fruit, and waits. And for over 1,000 years, the city of Mahendraparvata waited too. High on the slopes of Nam Kulen, above the famous ruins of Angkor Wat, rested an older city, a forgotten capital, a sacred site, a ghost of ambition masked by leaves. Mahendraparvata means mountain of the great Indra, and it was once the crown jewel of the Khmer Empire. Back when gods walked among kings, and kings thought they were gods. It is said to have been founded in the 9th century by Jayavarman II, the man who declared himself a universal monarch and began building an empire with more temples than most civilizations had houses. At the time, Mahendraparvata was an astonishing feat, a city in the clouds with grand shrines, gridded roads, stone palaces in the trees. But empires are delicate things, and mountains don't always cooperate. The area was vulnerable to floods, erosion, and logistical nightmares no amount of royal decrees could solve. And so, within a few centuries, the capital was moved to the more manageable plains below, to Angkor. Mahendraparvata was left behind, and the jungle, that green and patient sculptor, began to take it back. For 1,000 years, it was whispered of in inscriptions, half-truths carved into temple walls. But no one quite knew if it had existed or where, until 2012. That's when a team of archaeologists, armed not with shovels, but with lasers, used LiDAR technology to scan the forest from above. And the canopy peeled away like a magician lifting a curtain. Underneath, an entire city grid. Roads, reservoirs, temples, complex infrastructure hidden under centuries of moss and mulch. It was massive. Not a village, not a rumor, but a real sprawling city with an urban plan more organized than most modern ones. But here's the thing, it still isn't dug up. Not really. Mahendraparvata remains hidden. Too deep, too wild, too sacred. The archaeologists tiptoe in carefully, but most of the city still sleeps beneath the vines, rooted in secrecy. It is a place we found but chose in many ways not to wake. So when you dream tonight, you might find yourself on a moss-covered stairway, half swallowed by banyan roots. The stone beneath your feet is slick, the air thick with incense and rain. Something ancient breathes beneath the soil, not threatening, just waiting. The jungle forgets nothing, but it doesn't always share. Next, we float ever so softly across the waves once more, to the edge of the known world, where the map said, "Here be monsters," and a great city rose and fell on the back of myth. Thule, the phantom island at the edge of the world. Thule, the phantom island at the edge of the world. There is a line the ancient world was not meant to cross. Beyond it, darkness, fog, and silence so deep you could almost hear time blinking. That's where Thule lives. Thule, pronounced Thule like a secret you whisper into snow. It first appears in the writings of Paititi, a Greek explorer who lived in the 4th century BCE. A man from sunny Marseille who, one day, apparently looked north and said, "Let's go somewhere wildly unreasonable." He sailed past Britain, past the Orkneys, past everything the ancient Greeks had names for, and found, so he claimed, an island where the sea turned to slush, the sun barely set, and the sky didn't know what time it was. He called it Thule, the last known place. Beyond it, only speculation, sea monsters, edge-of-the-world poetry, nothing with a postcode. Pythia said the people of Thule lived off barley and honey, spoke an odd tongue, and wore furs like guiltless bears. He described perpetual twilight and a land caught between solid and liquid, as if the elements had grown tired and couldn't decide what to be. And then just like that, he left. No one else would find Thule again. Not exactly, though they tried. Medieval cartographers, not known for modesty, scribbled it onto maps like a ghost note, always further north than whatever you were looking at. Sometimes near Iceland, sometimes Norway, sometimes nowhere. Later, Nazi mystics would try to claim it as a lost Aryan homeland, because apparently even imaginary islands aren't safe from historical nonsense. In time, Thule became more symbol than location. A metaphor for ultimate remoteness, the edge of exploration, the boundary between the known and the unknowable. Today, the name lingers like a riddle. There's a Kanok air base in northern Greenland called Thule, a dark irony for a place defined by ice and military radars. There's a Thule society in the pages of conspiracy theories. And still, in quiet corners of literature and lullabies, Thule remains a place you go when you go too far. So what was it really? Iceland? A poetic exaggeration of the Arctic Circle? A land that only exists when you're cold, lost, and a little enchanted? No one knows. And perhaps that's the point, because Thule isn't just a city or an island. It's an idea, a soft, fog-bound whisper that the world is bigger than your best guesses, that there are always places just a little beyond the map, and maybe, if you squint through the frostbite, you'll see someone waving. Now rest. You've stood at the edge of the known world. Let the cold curl around you like a myth in sleep knowing you are safely far from it. Shall we now return to warmer sands? To a desert more golden than bleak? And a city of gold that maybe, just maybe, was always meant to disappear? Of course, dear traveler of tales, now we drift from snow-lit Thule to sunlit delusion, where the gold is blinding, the air too sweet, and dreams become quicksand. El Dorado, the gilded mirage that devoured men. There is a shimmer that lives behind the eyelids, just before sleep takes you, a flicker of gold, a flash of something perfect. El Dorado lives there. Always almost real, just ahead, just a little deeper into the jungle. The name means the Gilded One, not a city originally, but a man. A king, they said, who covered himself in gold dust each morning like a particularly ambitious skincare routine, and bathed in sacred lakes, offering treasures to the gods as if he had too many lying around. The Spanish conquistadors, bored, sunburnt, and ever hungry for shiny things, heard whispers of this golden king in the 16th century and promptly lost their minds. Now, keep in mind they were not doing well. Disease, rebellion, altitude sickness, and a distinct lack of maps meant most expeditions were already 40% hallucination. But still they searched, and the story grew. El Dorado transformed from a glittery monarch to a lost city to an entire kingdom of gold, as if the jungle were hoarding treasure just to be spiteful. Expedition after expedition marched into South America. Venezuela, Colombia, Guyana, Brazil, everywhere the rivers whispered and the trees pretended not to know. Men died, ships sank, and still they kept going. Some even found things, ruins, artifacts, hints of advanced civilizations deep in the Amazon, but never the city they wanted. Never that fabled El Dorado where the streets were gold and dreams were currency. Because here's the quiet truth. El Dorado wasn't real, not like they imagined it. But the Muisca people, who once lived in Colombia, did in fact perform rituals at Lake Guatavita involving offerings of gold. And in 1969, divers recovered golden artifacts from the lake bed. But no city, no golden streets, no king dripping in bullion. The real treasures were smaller, more spiritual, less Pinterest-worthy. And yet, El Dorado lives on. Because it was never about gold, not really. It was about what people are willing to believe when the jungle whispers sweet things and ambition clouds the senses. Even now, the phrase El Dorado evokes something glittering and unreachable. A perfect goal just past the horizon, just over the next hill, just out of reach. And isn't that, in a way, the most dangerous thing of all? So tonight, as you drift off, let El Dorado settle in your thoughts like gold dust. Beautiful, impossible, and best left alone. Because some cities, like some dreams, are meant to remain unfinished. Now, shall we turn from gold to glass? Our next tale takes us to the Baltic Sea, where beneath the earth lies a city that glows and hums and might never have existed at all. Let's drift onward to Vineta, the Atlantis of the north. Leave the golden mirage behind. Let the jungle's breath still. Let your thoughts sink like coins into water. We sail north once more, where the air tastes of salt and ancient pine, where seagulls cry over cold gray waves, and the sea keeps secrets like pearls in its mouth. Vineta, the Atlantis of the north. They called it the Atlantis of the Baltic, which is really just another way of saying, we're pretty sure it was real, but also, it probably sank, and please don't ask too many questions. Vineta was said to be the largest, wealthiest city in northern Europe, a seaport of splendor, where markets overflowed with goods from east and west, where gold jingled like casual conversation, and towers scrape the clouds with a kind of architectural ego only money can buy. Some said it was a Slavic stronghold, others swore it was founded by Vikings, and a few, more poetic than precise, claimed it was built by gods, or at the very least people who partied like them. It appears in chronicles as early as the 11th century, a city of sin with riches so great its merchants supposedly turned away a Christian bishop because his robe wasn't expensive enough. And so, as stories often go, the sea decided to fix that. Legend says Vineta was swallowed whole in a single wrathful night, its decadence drowned, its towers broken, its people reduced to myths told by fishermen who heard bells tolling beneath the waves. Sometimes on still nights, they said you could see the city shimmering just beneath the surface, like glass beneath ice. And sometimes, if you listened very, very closely, you might hear the faint hum of its market square, the laughter, the chime of a coin dropped too late. But where was Vineta? That's the thing. No one agrees. Some say it's off the coast of Usedom in modern Germany. Others claim the wreck lies near Wohlen, Poland, or far deeper somewhere entirely forgotten. Archaeologists have found traces, fortifications, ancient ports, trade goods, but not enough to confirm a city of Vineta's legend. It remains part history, part ghost. What makes it so haunting isn't just the mystery, but what it represents. Vineta is a warning of pride too polished, of greed too loud, of cities that grow so tall they forget they were built on shifting sands. But it's also oddly comforting, because in every generation people dream of Vineta. They look out at the sea and imagine a whole world just beneath the ripples. And maybe that's the point. Maybe Vineta is the part of us that wants to believe great beauty doesn't vanish. It just sinks a little and waits to be rediscovered. There are more cities like this, more whispers beneath the waves, and in the dust, and in the mountains. And now, dear listener, we follow the road that leads to ice, to a place carved into rock and solitude, a lost Norse colony so remote, it forgot to send a goodbye. Next, we go to the lost Norse of Greenland, where the snow swallowed kings. Then wrap yourself warmly, dear listener. Draw your blankets close like furs about your shoulders, for where we go next, the sun is shy, the wind has teeth, and history crackles like frost underfoot. The lost Norse of Greenland, where the snow swallowed kings. Imagine, if you will, a Viking standing on a frozen shore, squinting out at an ocean that has no color, only wind. Behind him, ice, silence, and the distant echo of church bells where no one remains. This is Greenland, and yes, it is, historically speaking, a terrible place to farm. But in the late 10th century, one man disagreed. His name was Eric the Red, and he had two things in abundance: a very dramatic beard and a very bad habit of getting banished from places. After being exiled from Norway for manslaughter, then exiled from Iceland for more manslaughter, Eric did what any visionary might do. He discovered a frozen wilderness and rebranded it as real estate. He called it Greenland, a name chosen not for accuracy, but for marketing purposes. You see, if you name a land Icy Murder Fjord, no one wants to move there. But Greenland? Why, that sounds just lovely. And it worked. People came. Around the year 985, hundreds of Norse settlers packed their sheep, their faith, and a frankly ludicrous amount of optimism and set sail. They built homes, sod-roofed, sturdy, stoic. They planted barley, raised livestock, established a thriving colony that lasted for centuries. At its peak, the eastern settlement, one of two major Norse colonies, boasted thousands of people, churches, chieftains, and trade with Europe. They had bishops. They had weddings. They even had lawsuits over cattle. In short, they made themselves at home. And then, very, very quietly, they disappeared. By the 15th century, no one was left. No records of war, no mass graves, no dramatic last stands. The settlements were just empty. Houses abandoned, livestock gone, churches slowly filling with snow. It was like someone had flipped a switch and turned off the colony. So what happened? Theories swirl like snowflakes. Too many, perhaps. Some say it was climate change, the onset of the Little Ice Age, which made farming even more impossible than it already was in Greenland, which is saying something. Others point to isolation, a slow decline in contact with Europe as trade routes shifted and priorities changed. Some suggest conflict with the Inuit, the native peoples who were much better adapted to surviving Arctic extremes. Still others wonder if the Norse simply gave up, packed what they could, sailed away, and vanished into myth. But perhaps the most poetic theory is this, that the Norse of Greenland refused to adapt. They clung to European ways, to cows and cathedrals, to wool and wheat and social hierarchies, in a place that demanded seal blubber, flexibility, and humility before the ice. They built stone churches in a land that needed snow huts, held fast to faith while the wind hollowed out their halls. And when the last prayer was spoken, the last hearth grown cold, they left no farewell. Not because they were forgotten, but because they chose not to change. And so now, when archaeologists walk among their ruins, they find not tragedy, but silence. A stillness deep and bright, where even the snow seems to remember. The Greenland Norse didn't die with a scream, but with a whisper, a long, slow fading into the white. Tonight, let their quiet be your lullaby. Let your breath mist the cold air of memory. And know that some stories end not in fire, but in frost. Now, shall we warm ourselves once more, come back into the sun? For in our next tale, we ride out into the blazing heat of the desert, where stone lions sleep and a lost city carved into cliffs waits with rose-red walls. We continue to Petra, the city in the rock that forgot its name. Then close your eyes, traveler, and let the frost melt from your thoughts. Shake the snow from your cloak, and feel the dry hush of the desert roll in soft as silk, hot as a memory you don't quite trust. Because now, we go to a city carved not by hands, but by time itself. Somewhere in the Jordanian desert, tucked into rose-colored cliffs and wrapped in silence, there lies a city that appears only when the shadows fall just right. Petra, stone carved like flesh, a city not built but chiseled, straight into the living rock, like someone decided to convince a mountain to keep secrets. It begins with a walk. You don't just arrive at Petra, you approach it like a reverent pilgrim through a narrow gorge called the Seek. The walls rise around you, tall, close, colored in swirls of pink and ochre. They twist, they turn, and then, suddenly, there it is. Al-Khazna, the treasury, a temple facade cut into stone with such delicacy that it looks as though the sandstone itself blushed when the sun touched it. 6 stories tall, columns, pediments, and sculptures weathered by centuries of breathless awe. And it's only the beginning. Petra sprawls, or rather, it unfolds, like a forgotten chapter you didn't know you'd written. Tombs carved into cliffs, theaters for thousands, staircases that lead nowhere or everywhere, depending on how much water you've had. It was once a thriving city, a hub of trade, wealth, and ideas. The Nabateans, a people with a flair for hydraulics and mystery, built Petra over 2,000 years ago. They were desert whisperers, able to coax water from rock, store it, channel it, and survive where others shriveled like figs. They taxed incense caravans, sold spices, silk, perfume. Petra glowed not just with architecture, but with stories traded in every tongue known to man. And then, they vanished. Not all at once, not with a bang. Petra was absorbed into the Roman Empire, survived for a while, faded under the pressure of earthquakes, shifting trade routes and time's usual erosion. By the medieval period, Petra had all but disappeared from Western maps. Locals knew it was there, of course, You don't forget a place like Petra, you just stop talking about it. And so it waited in warm, wind-smooth silence until 1812, when a Swiss explorer named Johann Ludwig Burckhardt wandered in, disguised as an Arab scholar, and reintroduced Petra to the world. Since then, the city has remained a paradox, an icon, a mystery, a ghost that glows under desert stars. We know it exists. We can walk through it, touch its walls, trace its faded inscriptions. And yet, Petra never quite explains itself. What was it for exactly? How did the Nabateans vanish so completely? Why so many tombs? What were the rituals, the beliefs, the names of the people who carved dreams into stone? We'll likely never know. And maybe, just maybe, Petra prefers it that way. Because not all cities want to be remembered. Some want to be rediscovered over and over again. So let the desert cradle you now, listener. Let the warm wind hum ancient lullabies through the sandstone crevices of your dreams. Petra does not ask you to understand her. She only asks you to pause and listen. For our next tale, we turn from the sands of Arabia to the steaming jungles of India, where a city sleeps beneath banyan trees and monkeys walk among crumbling walls. A city with temples like storybooks, a kingdom lost not to conquest but to time. We drift onward to Hampi, the forgotten empire of the south. Then exhale, dear listener, and let the desert dust slip from your lashes. We are leaving the silence of stone and stepping softly into a place where the jungle hums lullabies in Sanskrit and ruins lie tangled like forgotten dreams beneath banyan branches. The stars have shifted, the air is heavy with mango and incense, and now we arrive in the heart of the south, where gods once danced in stone. Welcome to Hampi, a place where granite boulders perch like sleeping elephants, where temples rise like fossils from the earth, and where echoes of an empire still ring beneath the rustle of fig trees. But you wouldn't know it at first glance. No. Today, Hampi is quiet, serene, as if the gods themselves have drawn a curtain over it and told the world to hush. But once, oh once, this was the beating heart of an empire. The Vijayanagara Empire, which in the 14th to 16th centuries was not merely wealthy, it was dazzling, rivaling the riches of Rome with palaces of carved stone, aqueducts, public baths, bustling markets, and temples that told stories in every chisel mark. Marco Polo, yes, that Marco Polo, called it the best provided city in the world. And this was a man who'd seen things. Hampi was no ordinary capital. It was a city built like a myth-given form, sacred geography sculpted into civic planning. The Tungabhadra River wound through it like a silver thread, mountains stood like guardians at its gates, and temples, oh the temples, towered with tiered pyramids, each corner holding up epics carved in granite. In its heyday, Hampi was home to 500,000 people. There were bazaars filled with silk and sapphires, elephants in ceremonial armor, and poets who recited Sanskrit verses under frangipani trees. But Hampi was not merely grand, it was beloved. Its people believed it to be a divine city, founded by gods, blessed by sages, and protected by fate. And then came 1565, the Battle of Talikota. The Deccan Sultanates, neighbors with grievances, banded together like wolves and brought down the might of Vijayanagara in a single, brutal, fiery siege. What followed was weeks of looting, burning, pillaging, temples smashed, markets razed, the great city left broken, not abandoned, not erased, but stilled, as though history itself had paused and whispered, "No more." And the jungle crept in, as it always does. And centuries passed, but Hampi was never truly lost. Villagers still lived among the ruins. Pilgrims still came to the Virupaksha temple, where Shiva is worshipped even now. And slowly, like a memory surfacing from a dream, Humpy returned. Archaeologists arrived, tourists with sun hats and selfie sticks. And beneath it all, the ancient stones still held their breath, waiting. Humpy's story is one of glory and ruin, of brilliance dimmed, but not snuffed out. It reminds us that even the most radiant of empires can fall, but that doesn't mean they vanish. Sometimes they just lie quiet, under the sun and banyan shade, waiting for the right footstep, the right question, the right night. So rest now beneath the mango tree of memory. Let your thoughts meander through broken colonnades, past the rustling robes of long-dead kings. Humpy is still there, whispering. And when the wind stirs just right, you might hear the bells ring again. But now, dear dreamer, we drift farther east, to an island where warriors built temples for thunder, where stone faces smile down from jungle-covered towers, and where time folded like paper over a city too vast to remember itself. In our next journey, we travel to Angkor, the lost megacity beneath the trees. Then close your eyes again, gentle traveler. The jungle is calling, not with a roar, but with a rustle, a low green murmur of roots and memory, a whisper that slips through the leaves like a forgotten lullaby sung in an ancient tongue. Tonight, we step softly through damp earth, where moss clings to stone and history breathes beneath the vines. Welcome to Angkor, alas. There are places in this world that were never meant to be hidden. Places too large, too loud, too grand to vanish. And yet, they do. Angkor was once the largest city in the pre-industrial world. A megacity, a metropolis so immense it sprawled across forests, its temples shimmering like gold in the humid sun. Now it slumbers. Not gone, never truly gone, but drowsing under jungle canopies, its gods wrapped in leaves. Let's begin with a name, Angkor Wat. You've heard of it, surely. That lotus-bloom temple mirrored in quiet waters, crowned with stone towers like folded palms, etched with dancing apsaras, its corridors echoing the light. It is the face of Cambodia, the pride of Khmer civilization. But it is only one petal of a flower that once bloomed far wider. Angkor wasn't just one temple. It was a city of 1 million people, flourishing over 1,000 square kilometers, larger than medieval Paris, bigger than London or Rome at its peak. They built with ambition. They carved mountains from rock. They diverted rivers and sculpted reservoirs the size of lakes. They called them barays, vast, man-made bodies of water, catching the monsoon's bounty, feeding the rice fields that fed the city that fed the empire. And the temples? Oh, the temples were dreams in stone. Bayon, with its 216 serene faces, smiling down from towers like ancient librarians who know everything you've ever done. Ta Prohm, wrapped in roots, where trees burst through walls like time reclaiming its prize. And yet, Angkor was never just monuments. It was alive. Dancers, scribes, fishermen, kings, a society of complex bureaucracy and deep spirituality, pulsing like a heart at the center of Southeast Asia. Until, slowly, the heartbeat faded. So why did Angkor fall? Oh, the usual suspects make their entrance. Climate change, war, ecological exhaustion. The monsoons grew erratic. The great waterworks clogged with silt. The neighboring Thai kingdom of Ayutthaya grew hungry. And in 1431, they came with elephants, fire, and intentions unkind. The city wasn't razed so much as abandoned. The capital moved south. The jungle crept in, and Angkor drifted from memory into legend. But for centuries, Westerners whispered of a lost city in the jungle, a Cambodian El Dorado. And then, in 1860, a French naturalist named Henri Mouhot stumbled into the ruins. and wrote breathlessly, "Grander than anything left to us by Greece or Rome." But here's the truth, dear listener. Angkor was never lost. The Khmer people had always known. They still came. They still prayed. Angkor Wat remained a functioning temple, even as fig trees cracked the courtyards and the jungle slowly swallowed its edges. Today, you can walk its ancient roads, still visible from the air. You can stand beneath stone smiles and feel your own face soften. You can hear cicadas screaming like they remember something you never learned, and yet, you'll never see it all. Because Angkor isn't a ruin, it's a memory still dreaming. It's the ghost of a mega city, the breath of a civilization exhaled into jungle heat. So sleep now, beneath a canopy of moonlight and moss. Let Angkor's stone faces watch over your dreams. Let the ancient engineers of water and wonder hum you into stillness. Because our journey is not yet done, our ship sails west once more, to a city not lost beneath leaves or waves, but beneath the earth itself. A city buried under ash, paused in mid-breath, preserved by fire and rediscovered by accident. In our next tale, we descend into Pompeii, the city that died mid-sentence. Then hush now, gentle listener, for the sea has quieted, the wind has folded its wings, and the earth itself begins to murmur. Not with words, but with warmth beneath your feet, with a whisper of ash in the air, and the scent of something once sweet turned suddenly still. Tonight we do not search for ruins above the ground. Tonight we descend into a city that was not forgotten, but interrupted. They never saw it coming, or perhaps they did, and simply didn't know what they were seeing. The animals had been restless, the wells ran dry, the sky turned the color of old bruises, but life continued, as it always does, until it doesn't. This is Pompeii, the Roman city caught in the middle of a sentence and never allowed to finish it, frozen in time, preserved in catastrophe, still reaching for its next breath 2,000 years later. Let us set the stage. It is late summer, 79 CE. Pompeii is a lively provincial city on the coast of what is now Italy, sun-drenched and comfortably smug. The streets are full of sandals and gossip. Vendors shout beneath awnings, selling honeyed figs and garum, a fermented fish sauce Romans inexplicably adored. There are bathhouses with heated floors and murals that would make a modern art teacher sweat. Children play with clay dolls. Men gamble in the streets. The taverns are loud. And Mount Vesuvius, that gentle green mountain in the background, it hasn't erupted in centuries. To the citizens of Pompeii, it's just a part of the view. Something scenic to lean a villa against. And then, on the morning of August 24th, the mountain opens its mouth. What follows is not merely eruption, it is obliteration disguised as choreography. A pillar of smoke rises 10 miles into the air. The sky turns to dusk. Ash rains down like snow that burns. The people don't all flee. Why would they? Earthquakes are familiar. Ashfall seems inconvenient, not final. Some escape, many do not. And then, after hours of confusion and darkness, a second wave, the pyroclastic surge. A superheated avalanche of gas, ash, and rock sweeping down at over 100 miles per hour, hotter than your oven will ever be allowed to get. It does not destroy, it instantly preserves. Men in mid-run, dogs still curled in sleep, bread still rising in ovens. The city is buried, and history forgets. For over 1,500 years, Pompeii slumbered under volcanic stone. It was rediscovered in the 18th century by accident when workers digging a water channel hit marble walls underground. And what they found wasn't ruins, it was a memory. Whole streets still paved. Wall graffiti that reads like bathroom stall wisdom. I don't want to sell my husband. He's not for sale. Or, we two dear men, Friends forever, we're here. There are bakeries with loaves still in the oven, a brothel with frescoes helpfully labeling the menu, a forum, an amphitheater, a temple to Venus where love never quite left. And then there are the casts, the plaster molds of people caught mid-flee, mid-prayer, mid-life. Not statues, shadows, proof that history doesn't always whisper. Sometimes it shouts and leaves the echo behind. Pompeii is not just a tragedy, it is a conversation between life and death. It reminds us that the past was not a canvas of grand speeches and heroic poses. It was people, with debts and hangovers and loud neighbors. People who danced and fought and made dinner plans for a tomorrow that never came. And somehow, 2 millennia later, they still speak to us. With every tiled floor, every scribbled love note, every dog curled beside a door that never opened again. So let us end here, quietly. Let the ash settle once more. Let the lanterns of the past flicker low. The cities we visited, Atlantis of the jungle, fortresses of stone on sea, capitals carved in canyon walls, they may have crumbled, or burned, or sunk, but they are not lost. They wait, in silence, in stone, in stories. And now, they sleep, as should you. Close your eyes, dear listener. Let the weight of centuries hold you gently. Drift beneath vaulted skies and ruined arches. Breathe slow. The world is very old and very, very quiet. And that, dear dreamer, is a tale for another night. Good night.